Recording. So this is the Castle Workshop on the 26th of January 2024. We're going to start off with Quinn and Left doing a game, or doing a stage from the Ultraliga. So Quinn's written down that their strengths are flowing well with the co-host, being enthusiastic about the game and game strategies. Weaknesses are game knowledge, I guess more specific game knowledge. For Left, enthusiasm about the game and lots of game knowledge, and what Left's working on is cooperating with the other caster and kind of, like, I guess just trying to have more of a conversation. If you're both ready, oh yeah, so just for everyone else, so please do make some notes as this is going forward, because I certainly know that I find it a lot easier to remember after the fact if I don't have to, use my brain. I would say don't, while the first part of the casting is going on, I would say don't probably write in chat or talk or do anything that's going to distract them, because that will be distracting. But cool.
I'm just going to mute the server for an hour, I guess.
Yeah, I mean that works too.
Messages from popping up.
Everything is like minimized for me, so I'm good.
Alright, cool. Right, in that case, I'm going to bang this over to be as full screen as possible. And then, so this is another thing. I realise now, with Quinn being newer as well, it's probably best to figure out between the two of you who wants to act in the more of the host role, as in, like, bringing people into the game and doing that kind of business. Would I be right in assuming that Quinn, would you be more inclined towards that side?
Doing what?
Doing more of the sort of
like
host
introducing everything.
Yeah.
Like, hello everybody, we're here to talk about this and that, and let's get right into it. Like these kind of things, right?
I hate doing that, to be quite honest with you.
Alright, Left, are you okay doing that for this one then?
I haven't really done that either. I think, like, actually, I had the feeling that it was more of a, like, play-by-play. I think that play-by-play casters do more.
Traditionally, but I guess
I might be completely mistaken, but that was the impression I got from the Polish scene so far. All the play-by-plays were the ones who had the tendency of, like, doing all the hosting stuff.
no, that's generally true, but let's not worry about it this time. Left, if you're okay to take it for this particular practice, we just won't. I'll fast forward through any stuff. Alright, cool. So I'm going to start the video in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, hello everybody. We're here to talk about the day 4 of Ultraliga, the PRC. I'm here with Quinn. Let's get into it.
Hello, hello. This is just round 1.
All right. So right away we have a pretty strong opener here. 2 Corkis and a Guardian Taric and Shop, which after his buffs, he makes a pretty strong front line. Oh, and here we have a Xante and an Aphelios, which means that maybe he can look for a Heartsteel line. And what do you think about this opener here?
The Vi, that's a good opener with the Vi headliner and the emo backline. Very interesting, getting a Vex right off the start for this player. We'll see what they do with that in the late game.
It is indeed, and with an Adaptive Slam right there, and half of a Morello, or half of a Nashor's Tooth, it might be a Vex game for him. We'll see what augments he gets. Oh, so that's interesting. There's an Escort quest there, which would be pretty good if he can actually manage to build a board strong enough to win those rounds. Let's see if that's what he opts for. Which one do you think he's going to pick? Oh, and that's Salvage Bin.
Yeah.
That
oh my god.
gives him a lot of
Sorry.
flexibility to basically play
I gotta interrupt for a second. I'm finding it really hard to see what's going on.
Oh, let me pause for a second.
I was gonna say, can you full screen that counterfeit?
Yeah, let me just change it across to a different setup and do it this way.
Oh, that's much better.
Oh yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, that is much better. So the problem is actually that a lot of this stuff is in Polish, which is like not a big deal for me, but it might be difficult for you to get the augments and stuff, right?
Oh yeah,
Oh my.
because I don't really know the names of the augments by heart yet. I'm working on that though.
Uh-huh. All right.
Okay. No
I'll do
apologies
my
for that.
best, but
All right. Let's dive back a bit
Yeah,
then.
just contribute the way you see fit, all right? And then like involve me in whatever you like. Would you like to take the lead a little bit, or?
oh my god, I don't know.
I
All
think
right.
it's best if you just like keep going. She just like adds some stuff at the beginning
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
to
Sure.
warm her up. Yeah, I think that's better because I know that spot where she's in right now.
All right. Sure.
All right. Let's start around again. But yeah, yeah. I was to say normally I wouldn't like interrupting it, but I'll just say for Quinn, just don't worry about saying. You don't need to say anything particularly clever. Just take the
Yeah.
space, and what I
Sorry,
just tend to
no.
do is just
Yeah,
say
just-
whatever comes to your mind. It's,
I just had a hard time seeing
Yeah.
the
Okay.
screen. That's all.
all right, cool. Well, let's start the one
All right,
over
sure.
entirely then. All right, cool. And 3, 2, 1.
Okay, hello everybody. I'm here with Quinn, and we're going to talk about Ultraliga Day 4, the final day of the groups, which decides who moves on to the finals and who gets eliminated from the first phase. So, what do you think is going to happen, Quinn?
I have no idea. I'm not super familiar with this league, so I guess we'll just see what happens going forward. We're starting off with the player that we're looking at right now, the 2 Corki Open.
All right, yeah. The 2 Corkies with a rod, maybe not that strong. Oh, but here, oh yeah, there is a Xante pair and there's an Aphelios. So maybe he's going to be going for Heartsteel line, but also there's a Rage Bleed and there's a Kale there, right?
Yeah,
Pick it
that
up
could
for
be a
that
very
as well.
strong pentakill game for that player if they decide to lean into that. And this other player we have picking a Vi headliner right off the start. What do you think about that?
Yeah, the Vi Headliner, especially after buffs, is a really, really strong early game unit holder. And also, if you add another punk, it can give you those rerolls that are really, really, really good if you actually want to play those reroll comps that roll at level 6 and 7. Like, for instance, Executioners, right? Or
Yeah.
so many of them, actually.
For sure. It's definitely been like a favorable comp to date. I've seen a lot of like the executioners, especially with Twin Terror getting picked up. A lot of people really lean into that with the Twitch and the Vex.
Oh, but here, that was a very interesting decision to pick Salvage Bin there, which gives him a lot of flexibility and basically ensures that he can play anything. Oh, and here we have Idealism, so leaning into that melee line, probably. We're going to play
Yeah.
Yone, or maybe something like Viego or Zed, right? Playing around those units, probably.
For sure. And looks like they're trying to go for a hard
say
steal.
yes? And there we go. There's an Even Shroud Slam. So that means that he's committing 100% at this point to this AD line. Right? So whatever he's going to play, it's definitely going to be AD. What do you think about limiting yourself in that way this early in the game?
It's definitely interesting, but I'm definitely also the kind of player who will do that where I'll like full send into a specific playstyle sooner rather than later. It can backfire if other people end up trying to play that same comp later in the game. So we'll see. We'll definitely see how it goes, especially if that other player leans into playing pentakill with I see some pentakill on the board and the bench for that player as well.
Yep. And the thing about early slams and early commits is also that other players scout and they can see what you're going to play. And so that discourages, oh, look at this. 6 Olafs and
Wow.
Gargantuan with the Titans and like half of another Titans and a Sterak. One surprising thing here is that he does not slam the Sterak, actually. It would make his Olaf much, much stronger and probably allow him to win streak through the stage easily. So I don't know exactly what's behind the decision, but...
My guess is they
Oh,
might
and
be
look at the
looking
other
for a
side. What do you think
bow.
about that?
Oh yeah,
Yes,
this is
that is a
definitely
very
very,
good guess, right?
very interesting matchup here. We'll see how it goes. But what I was going to say is my guess is that he'd be waiting for a bow to slam a second Titans, but I don't know. I'm not entirely sure what kind of items Olaf likes to get. And oh, the Kale ended up taking down the Olaf.
Yeah, so he's gonna be happy about that, I suppose, winning against this Olaf and not having to face him later on when he's all fully itemized. But I kind of get the feeling that if he wanted to lose those couple rounds at the beginning, he would have refrained from slamming the Titans already, right? If he wants to actually aim for this first carousel and picking up an item then, he would probably just do his best to lose those first 3 rounds instead of slamming such a strong item on such a strong early game unit. But we'll see how it goes. Maybe he will get the bow anyway.
Yeah, you're probably right, but
Oh,
it looks like we got another interesting matchup here: the Big Shot versus the Emo backline. Although the
Oh, this
Vi
Vi
looks a
looks
lot
like a
stronger
complete
than the
beast.
Gragas. Yeah. Corky.
Yeah, she's
Oh
really,
no,
really
they might be
tanky.
going down. Oh, I don't know.
And
Yeah.
the Twitch has it, yeah. Oh, but that Vi can tank a lot with those items. And actually, like when she dies, she also feeds those emo units mana. So
Yeah, that's
like
very
you
true.
put in you devote so many resources to actually taking that Vi down. And when you do, like you just feed the other team mana anyway, right? So that must be kind of rough for whoever faces that. And let's see if Shurikane actually gets the bow here. Okay, so there is a sword on a 3 cost, so I'm sure that Quebec, the Yone player, is going to be very happy with it. And yes, he does pick up a bow.
Yeah, that's exactly what I
So the
guessed
Olaf
was gonna
player-
happen.
Yeah, so the Olaf player does get another bow. So I'm sure he's going to be really, really happy with it. Oh, and that's interesting actually, because he's playing Spoils of War, which means that he will really, really want to play the strongest board in order to get those stacks, as many as he possibly can, but he's not playing a headliner. And instead, he's actually just going for Heartsteel. So this is kind of a big trade-off there, right?
Big trade-off. Definitely someone who's looking to play the econ game more so than having a strong board, which could definitely end up being a strong board mid to late game, depending on what he does with that Heartsteel.
Yeah, the thing is that typically, like with Spoils of War, you just want to kill as many units as possible so you can actually snowball that early game gold and like really get as much of it as you can. But he opts for Heartsteel instead, which is going to give him like something after 4 rounds pass, which is quite a lot.
Yeah.
I can see Olaf losing, not being able to get through that super mighty Vi. Oh, and here we have raised the stakes. Would you
Raise
look at
the
that?
stakes.
So we gotta, yeah, I gotta take a look at this guy if he actually manages to keep his loose streak going, because he's not the only player loose streaking here. So this might be a disaster waiting to happen if he faces here Stinky Abuser, this guy.
Looks like
This
there's
is
multiple players playing
Definitely much other
Heartsteel.
board. Oh, but he dodges him, so he doesn't really face him. So he should probably be able to keep his loose streak going and
Yeah.
like not fail his like stakes raise, I suppose. Hopefully he's gonna be all right with that. And this Executioner board looks really, really strong actually.
Oh, 2 Kales battling it out, but looks like
He actually won. He
Yeah.
actually won the round. The raise the stakes guy. Oh no. That is so bad for him. That is like -3 placements at least. Oh no, he still has 5 Heartsteel in stage 2, but oh my, this is so sad for him.
Yeah, I guess we'll see how he pivots, if he decides to pivot. Who knows? 5 Heartsteel is pretty deep into the comp.
Oh, it is, but Heartsteel is not something that you want to play like till the end of the game unless you focus on the Ezreal line. And we'll see if he actually wants to do that. But he doesn't have a blue buff component, which is like something that is absolutely crucial in line.
Yeah.
He will probably just opt to go for some sort of melee carry, right? Yeah, like Yone. But and then again, he gets a rod, which is really not the component that you want to see here.
Okay,
Oh, we have a tome here.
Let's pause it up there. Okay, cool. How did you both find that?
I had fun.
I have fun. Yeah, I'm definitely. I think I'm just nervous. I think that's all it is.
Ooh, sorry.
Literally, you were so confident. I didn't even like hear out of your voice or something that you are nervous.
Oh,
For real
really? Because
though.
I feel very nervous.
No, yeah, but like I couldn't hear it at all.
Yeah. Okay. So what I'll feedback last. Just so I don't end up like running over anything that people got to say. Does anyone who's got anything who wants to feedback just like drop a dot in the practice cast text chat? Then I'll make sure to get through everyone before coming. Maybe not. Okay. All right. Well, in that case, the stuff which I got from that was, yeah, Quinn. There was a lot of stuff I really liked by what you're doing there. I really liked that you brought your kind of personal anecdote about sort of how you play. I can't remember which player it was, but just like talking about your play style and how the player was playing similarly into it, which I thought was a really nice way of interjecting a little bit of your own personality without necessarily like bringing the focus.
It was
on
about
you.
committing early, I think, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like more of that. That was great.
Yeah, that was really good. I think you did some. You showed some potential to do some play-by-play kind of stuff there. That you jumped onto one of the fights and got excited about it, which is all you really need to do for play-by-play, which is great. That's a great thing to have in your wheelhouse and definitely worth working on. Also, there was a bit where you were talking about like kind of trying to characterize what how a player was playing and where it could potentially lead, which I thought was really good. In terms of stuff to work on, there was, I think, it's difficult to kind of to separate out this out because I think between the two of you there was a bit of kind of communication problems, but
Yeah.
I would say
It could be Discord latency too. I'm not entirely sure.
yeah, it might. In terms of like the stuff which is definitely like in your hands to take care of, is towards the start of it. This wasn't so much for a problem as it went on, but trying to leave more for your co-caster to grab onto, even if it's something quite straightforward. That just, you know, if you make a point, just like leave like a specific. I forget this myself all the time. That's why it comes to mind. Just like leave something for your co-caster to grab onto at the tail end of the point. Like a sort of a question or a thought about what you're seeing. Don't just describe what you're seeing, because that's not a huge amount someone can do apart from be like, you're right. But if you say something like, oh, which seems like a strong early play, or just some sort of assessment, something that someone can agree or disagree with, means that they've got just more to do with. The only other stuff was, yeah, there was a little, I think, again, this might have been latency, but just like, it felt like there was maybe a few times you weren't quite ready to be passed back to. And just trying to read the tone of your co-caster will help with that. Which is, because people normally have a sort of tell as to when they're passing back. Normally it will be lowering their voice at the end. Either lowering or raising the voice, like changing the tone, would normally indicate they're trying to pass to you. So that makes life a lot easier.
That was going to be my biggest, most practical note for this one, is making a clear handoff in between you is probably the most important thing. Like, we can all work on what we say in the middle, but knowing when I'm ending what I'm saying so that someone else can pick it up, and that I know when they end that it's my turn. Just being able to pass the ball back and forth like that is the best, and it makes it the least amount jarring when listening to a broadcast. So making sure you end your sentences and you know it's the end.
In terms of, so this is kind of for both of you, but for just generally, is talking about the overall game state, because there was a lot of sort of discussion about like what an individual player was doing, and a little bit of talk about how that would kind of play into the overall game, but not really any talk about, you know, who was doing well, who was win streaking, who was loss streaking, that kind of stuff. So that's always a very easy thing just to throw in, just to, you know, every, I guess, like ideally like once per stage, like minimum, try and mention something about how the game is developing. Like, you know, these players are win streaking, these players are loss streaking. ideally tied to something else you're talking about as well, so it's not just that. But it's something to kind of keep in mind.
That's a great observation. Thank you very much. Yeah, could have mentioned that Lelouch and Travis are both 5 streaking and they haven't really faced each other, whereas there were also 2 players heavily loose streaking.
Mm-hmm.
And you can use that
and
to
only one of them managed to keep their loose streak. So, yeah.
you can use that to like ideally you tie that together with another point. So like if you say like, oh, Yuta's got a pretty strong looking early board here, and that's gonna be important because there's 2 players who are win streaking right now. So you've tied your points together and made it into a larger story. So to less specifically, I think this is true for both of you, but it was some of the trying to figure out communication stuff. But the direct questions are okay. I try and use them maybe only once or twice, just because it breaks up the flow quite a lot to directly ask someone else a question repeatedly. In terms of left for you,
Alright, so no direct questions, just prompts instead?
It doesn't have to be no direct questions, but I think there was like a bunch of
When it makes sense, yeah. Where a lot of times maybe
Alright,
between
yeah.
us it didn't necessarily make sense. It was just kind of to push it along, but like the prompts should realistically do that instead of questions.
You can basically everything you
Alright,
want to
got
say
it.
in a question you can get across just by talking about it. Like you can imply the question without directly saying what do you think of this, by just be like, oh, I really like I really like blah 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 that's going on. It can do this and this, and then the other person again can agree or disagree. Something left I watch out for is the talking, hesitating, and then carrying on again. Loads of people will do this, and it's a really easy way to confuse the heck out of your co-caster. So I think
Alright.
Yeah,
you-
because I would hear a pause, and I would go to say something, and then you would talk again, and I
Yeah.
think that's what was confusing to
Yeah.
me.
Like
But
I heard that like a few times when Left was just like talking and then stopped talking, and Quinn wanted to say something, and then she needed to like being interrupted, let Left talk, and then it goes back to her, and Quinn needs to say that she was going to say something. I think that's a little bit difficult if yeah, but that's I think Counterfeit also said it as like just a thing to figure out the communication between 2 people.
Alright, I'll keep that in mind. Thanks.
So one way to, again, if there is any kind of Discord lag as well, I would try and maybe get a little bit more comfortable with leaving some space, like a little bit more space, like dead air, so that I think there were some times where you weren't sure if Quinn was coming in, so you would just like sort of charge forward into it, and I think you'll have an easier time by just like leaving like a half second more between, if you're not sure if it's if Quinn's coming back in again. Other thing is I think like you were talking about the big thing you wanted to was the cooperation with another caster. I think you were probably on the sort of the spectrum of sort of cooperative versus like trying to think what the best way of putting it is. I would say that you probably would be more beneficial for you to be more looking to step back when you hear your co-caster talking, and let them in rather than just carrying on talking, because it sounds like it will sound really, really bad in a broadcast to have you both talking at the same time.
Okay, noted.
Yeah, sorry, I know that's quite a lot of stuff, but did anyone else have anything else other to try for to feedback before we get into the second section of this?
One thing for Left that came to mind went, for example, like at the end of like the first block when you guys were talking sort of about the different Heartsteel cash outs, and then you noticed I really liked how you were highlighting, that they raised the stakes, and then especially since we weren't even, the observer wasn't on the person who had raised the stakes, that you brought up that they did in fact win the round, so that they lost their raise the stakes value. And then, but then when you sort of said very definitively, that's gonna lose them at least a few placements. And,
Yeah, yeah.
like knowledge wise, that could be very true. But I think probably on like a cast, you probably don't want to frame it so definitively. Probably want to make it. Yeah, that's weird to describe, but like definitively
Like it's
saying like, yeah,
yeah, it's
sorry.
like it's
Uh-huh.
like it's
All
like
right.
it's like you wanted to judge it, or like to like how can we say that without even saying it too offensive? Like it's like when people are casting, we don't want to play God, right? So we don't know what will happen in the future, and also just because of losing all like most of the stacks does not mean that it loses us like a few placements. But like maybe you could just say that it puts you a little bit more behind, or you will lose like, I don't know, some econ or some anything, but like not like placements, because like, yeah, how she already
Yeah.
said it, it's like so
Or at least you want
definitely.
to like, yeah, you want to like at least describe, because like as TFT players, especially like as a high level TFT player, right? It's easy to think in the terms of like statistics where you're like, oh, you missed the Heartsteel cash out. That loses you most likely a couple placements. But as a viewer, they're probably not necessarily going to be like, oh yeah, Heartsteel cash out, immediate loss. That's -3 placements. I know that. So instead of just saying like, oh, that's -3 placements for them, you might want to be like, you like use the narrative to be
Puts them
sort
in
of
a
explain
difficult
it.
situation or something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah, be like, this is
All right.
why, and then you can use it actually even to create a narrative, because instead of saying, well, that's that's put them in a position from maybe like they were really in a great position with the cash outs and they were going to be win streaking through stage 3, but now, oh, they lost it, so they lost all that value, sort of explain it, and then you can use that to be like create a further narrative, like, okay, going forward they're going to have like, they're going to have to climb back into the game if they want to potentially win, or I think yeah.
Yeah, so you're kind of using it to build out the story of that player rather than just sort of close that avenue. Okay, so let's get
Alright,
into the,
great.
the second part of it. So, I guess it's better to ask each of you rather than like just tell you. What kind of stuff would you like to try and implement for the second time round? That we can keep an eye on how well it's working.
Can I just quickly say that both of you were like so confident and good in your language and like vocabulary? Like I was very impressed of that.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, if
Thanks.
anyone, just because I'm not doing a great job of writing stuff down, if anyone's got any
Good.
feedback like that kind of stuff, please do drop it in the document. I put my own notes in there, but like for both of their future references, if you could drop in any thoughts you have, then this will be a hopefully useful resource for all of the casters to look back on and see what stuff was mentioned previously.
Okay.
But yeah, okay. So Quinn, what kind of stuff do you want to try out for the second stage?
Just taking in the feedback that was given, just trying to work better with the co-host, I think is like the biggest thing that was brought to attention. So, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I would say from your side of things, the big thing I'd like to hear for you doing in this one is to try and make your piece of commentary give something obvious for
Yeah.
Left to follow up on. Like every
Yeah,
time you say
yeah.
anything, just leave something. It never has to be anything clever. In fact, it's Johnny
Yeah.
better. It's not.
Sounds good.
All
work
right.
on
So Left, from your side, what are you going to try and work on?
I'm for sure gonna step back a bit and give more space to talk. Talk less myself and try to not leave those pauses in what I'm saying. Try to speak in like short, sweet sentences, get to the point, finish. Would that like solve some of the problems at least?
Yeah, it
Alright.
yeah.
Hopefully it would.
All right. Cool.
So I'll try to do just that.
All right. Cool. Let's get back into it. Are you both ready?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Let's go. 3, 2, 1. So do you want a moment to decide who's going to be coming back in?
Yeah.
Oh,
Would you like to, or
sorry.
should
I can do it. I can do
I
it.
lead?
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Alright,
give
Quinn,
me
bring-
something to talk about, right?
All right.
Yeah.
Some honest observations, right? Stuff like that.
Sorry.
Quinn
I'll just do
coming
like,
back in?
and we're back.
Yeah. It's been a tech
Yeah.
pause.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah.
All right. 3, 2, 1.
We're back after some technical difficulties. The player that we're observing right now has a Tome of Traits on their board, which is a very interesting item to be getting so early on in round 3.
Indeed, there's a lot of stuff that a tome can help you with, and it can really just give you a lot of direction here.
So we see Mosher going up against Heartsteel this round. That Jax has a ton of like really good items from that Thieves Glove.
Indeed, and actually, Moshers are a really, really, really strong trait this early on in stage 3, so he might be looking to keep them for a while. But as we can see in Emo Augment, he's probably going to be playing around that later on.
Yeah, definitely. Augment choices are coming up. We got some prismatic augments. Very interesting to see what players are going to take. Right off the bat, we see Jeweled Lotus.
Yeah, that's a very, very strong battle augment for the young player or for the melee AD player. So I'm sure he's going to be very happy with that choice. Okay, can we backtrack a little? So for augments, should I be talking more? Because
yes, absolutely.
because these are all in Polish, right? And it would be probably difficult for you to figure out which is what, right?
So I know,
Okay,
like
so
I know, maybe
could we go
like
back
a good.
Counter, could we backtrack a little bit, like 30 seconds?
Yeah,
material?
of course.
Have another go at that. Thanks a lot. All right. Okay. Let's take a look at what we have here. Okay, so these aren't really that good. Maybe the stationary support 3 might actually be pretty okay later on, gives you some direction. So let's see if that's what he opts for.
You see some rerolling going on.
Oh, that's an
here,
interesting one. Yeah, we'll see if he gets any better options, but no, he does for the stationary support. And he gets a Zephyr. Oh, it's going to be pretty tricky to use.
Zephyr is definitely interesting considering you can only get it through a support item. They changed it so you can no longer build it. So we'll see how he utilizes Zephyr. Definitely lots of scouting involved with that item.
Definitely. And would you look at that, the Vex player got Twin Terror when there's already another Vex player in the game. So what do you think is going to happen there?
Definitely gonna lean into that. Do the whole double Vex, double Twitch. It'd be interesting to see if they get items to complement that playstyle. Definitely need a lot of items to, I think, really make it worthwhile. With only one item on the Vex being a
for
Shojin.
sure. And Salvage Bin. Yeah, but Salvage Bin is going to help him item-wise, definitely. And we have both of them, both of the emo players, being 100 HP and streaking. So that's going to be really interesting to see which one of them is going to win the roll-down race and hit their 3 stars before the other.
Yeah, definitely. And fighting for Vexes is going to be interesting. So we'll see if anybody's able to actually hit that 3-star Vex.
Oh, this Amumu looks really mighty. Amumu Chosen is actually really, really good because instead of just getting armor stacks, it also gives him MR. So it makes him really, really strong against all kinds of damage. And look who he's fighting.
Yeah, the Poppy with the Thieves Glove. The Radiant Thieves Gloves is definitely a little scary. But it looks like she's going to get taken down, and the Amumu barely has a dent in him. So definitely a win for this Amumu player.
It is, and he was fighting the other emo player, the other 100 HP win streaker. So that's actually a really, really impactful one there, and gives him a really, really big advantage in this war of roll downs. We'll see if that's gonna allow him to get a bigger lead later on. Probably yes.
Yeah, with that 8 round win streak and still sitting at 100 HP, definitely looking good for them in the lobby with the 50 gold as well. So
It's gonna be really hard for just about anything stage 3 to put a dent in this Amumu. Really, really strong front line here.
we also see someone throwing Jazz on their board. With the Jazz emblem, definitely an interesting choice, considering they don't even really have a ton of traits to lean back on with that Jazz. So we'll see how this round goes.
And an interesting thing is that he has final reserves, actually, which can allow him to go level 9 really easily and just play legendary units on his board, which, along with this Jazz Spatula, can really do a lot of work later on.
Yeah, absolutely. But we do see the Jazz player being taken down, which is kind of expected. So hopefully he's able to pull through in the mid game. On this other board, we got 2 Kales taking down this other player as well.
That's a lot of AP on the Akali. 320, 360.
And still no match for this Amumu, though. Looks like Akali's going down. Still streaking this one player. Still at 100 HP. Looking good for them in the lobby so far.
And here we have the Heartsteel player, who was only 3 stacks short of 200, which is a pretty impactful barrier to break, actually. So a little bit unfortunate for him.
Yeah, definitely unfortunate for him. See a lot of lobbies getting swapped around and changing throughout the game. Someone else throwing in Jazz as well with a Jazz emblem. But they don't have a misfortune, unlike the other Jazz player.
On the bench, he has one. He just opted not to play her. Oh, but on the other side, there's a Pentakill Spatula with 6 Kales already. So we're probably going to see that reroll. Restar.
This really strong Olaf from the start. Looks like he 3-starred him and starting to take out players with that Olaf as well.
Yeah, I got him really early, and so in addition to like being monstrous in this stage 3, he also has a lot of gold to level up and look for more expensive units to complement that Olaf.
On the Wolf round, we'll see what some players get here. Looks like lots of items, lots of gold. This Heartsteel player definitely doesn't have as many stacks as some of the other Heartsteel players. So we'll see if he starts to swap out, hitting that 2-star Mordekaiser during a roll down, and opting for a Yone headliner.
And this is definitely the best Yone he could have hit. Crowd Diver is the absolute best and really, really strong, but I'm surprised by this decision. He opted not to give his main carry, the Yone, an Infinity Edge, which would really increase his damage drastically, and opted to itemize the Zed instead. So we'll see how that turns out for him.
Yeah, that is definitely an interesting choice. Zed really isn't that strong of a unit on its own. So it's very interesting. This Kai'Sa with the Radiant Thieves Gloves taking down the stationary support player.
Yeah, she's really doing work, and the Bard 3 as well, really doing great. We have 2 players streaking, and one of them is the mighty Olaf, and the other is a 100 HP Vex player who is taken down by the Olaf just now.
Yeah, it's definitely very interesting. But Olaf can get really, really scary. Definitely with those items that he has. And definitely with the 6 pentakill on the board. It's very, very scary.
And we have
Or
heavy
is-
hitters, which on this Olaf approximately has, I think, 5,000 HP, which gives him 50 AD and 50 AP, which is actually a lot. This augment really, really boosted his strength there.
Okay, let's go down there. So, all right, let's see if we can get some some dots in the practice cast charts. If people have got some stuff to feedback, and I hope that people do. Please do drop some dots in there into the practice cast text chat. I know there's some opinions in there. No, still low. There we go, Honey Bear. Good job. All
Yeah,
right,
sorry.
we
Thank you.
we found
Thank
it.
you. I was like leaned away from my PC, so I'm like, oh, dot. I'm like, I was ready to talk. I just couldn't get my dot in.
Well, you're up first, Honey Bear. Hit us with those.
Thank you. I
knowledge
appreciate
bombs.
it. Yeah, everybody else can wait, especially the CLE guy. Get back there.
Sorry, I was too slow.
That's right. Yeah, my only bit of critique would be and I know Left, you were trying to pull back just a little bit, but be excited and ready to talk whenever the other person stops. So as soon as the other person even gives like a brief pause and you're like, I think that's it, be prepared with something, whatever the something may be. And obviously with time will come better and analytic skills, better, whatever it may, whatever you may be looking for at that exact moment. But just be ready with something. That way it limits the downtime and it brings the excitement back to the game. Even just a couple seconds of downtime or a second and a half of downtime can be, pull away from the how good the cast actually is.
Kind of had the impression that the downtime was like after I was done speaking.
It was. I think it was a little bit of both, and I think it mostly is going to stem from you guys not casting with each other ever, and so there's going to be like a, oh, is he done? Is he not done? Type deal.
Yeah.
Which is perfectly fair. It's gonna happen constantly, no matter who you're with. Even, I know I think Counterfeit has spoken on this exact point, and I believe it was him anyways, and correct me if I'm wrong, Counterfeit. You sometimes like downtime,
Yes.
if there's a major thing going on, just to leave the attention on the map and not on the casters. But there's a time and place for that. But for now, the general rule I would stick with is just try your best to fill the gap. And if you are the one speaking and there happens to be a gap, feel free to pick it back up real fast with another small point and then drop it again, for the other caster to pick it up.
Oh, all right.
Counterfeit, do you have thoughts on that? Because I believe it was you that had specifically spoken on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always going to be, I think for Left in particular, like there was trying to calibrate is always going to be tricky where, kind of, you get told you're speaking too much, so then you'll start kind of being more hesitant to come in, and so it will swing back too far the other way of, of being too hesitant or too slow to pick up on
And the
points.
balance.
Yeah.
It definitely is.
But, I mean, you've got the two calibration points, I think, of, the first section was coming in too much, the second section was coming in too little, so trying to find somewhere in the middle, and you're probably about right. Cool.
All right, sure.
CLE.
I think you guys handing off was significantly better this time. I think you guys kind of took that into effect of like, yep, that was my turn. Now it's their turn, and so that was going well. I think the bigger point, and this comes a lot with practice, is speaking for a bit longer, because you are casting together, so it's a conversation. But also, when you're done making a point, you need to be able to take a breath, gather your thoughts, look around, and do the thing. And so if you have like a 5-word sentence and then toss it back, oftentimes it can be too short and not give your co-commentator enough time to move to the next thing.
Thoughts from
So it was
you?
too short? So this time, like I wasn't like talking for long enough.
It's for both of you. I think it's oftentimes easy to
All
not
right,
say.
sure.
Yeah,
Yeah, I've
Jeez.
noticed that too.
It is tricky, like to find that sweet spot
Mm.
between like too much and too little.
yep.
Yeah.
I also think that taking those spaces is good. Like you did it better than before, but also like it's very important to take the focus on like spots where you actually need to talk and where you actually can like take some spaces, because like when he had like his roll down, he just pushed level 7 and you left it like commentated. It was like very important to
Mhm.
talk, to get the viewers into his state, that he just pushed level 7 and he did the roll down to search for something specific, or like to get the tension up, because it was so tense at that moment. And also think like for the player himself, and nobody was talking like in that specific time. Yeah.
No, I think that's. I guess like maybe to expand that to a broader thing is, and this is something I struggle with as well, is to try and, if you can, to try and get ahead of the game slightly, so that, because it's very hard if you're just very reactive to what you're seeing,
Yeah.
because then you just kind of want to talk about what you're seeing just to catch up. But ideally, yeah, if you can sort of put enough pre-discussion to each person's board that ideally you can catch that kind of stuff before it happens. But yeah, no, I think that's fair, Twiggy. Themefire.
So more of
Oh,
that.
no, please.
I was mentioning, I think, things like two emo players contesting each other, right, on roll downs later on. Who's gonna hit first? It's gonna be an arms race, right? That kind
Yeah.
of stuff. More
Yeah,
of
that
that.
stuff's really good.
All right. All right.
Did you want to comment more before we go on to Themefire?
I think
take
I'm
that.
good.
I'll take that
I'm
as
okay.
a. I'll take that as a no.
Yes. Okay, so
Um,
yeah, Themefire.
Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. I actually just about that. I really liked super double thumbs up on the mentioning of the two Vex players. As soon as the person took Twin Towers, I was kind of like, in my mind I was like, all right, are they gonna mention, because you guys were just talking about the emo player, and I was like, oh boy, that's a huge thing. And so I was sort of like counting the seconds, and I was starting to note, and then you brought it and you mentioned, you're like, oh, there's two Vex players, what's gonna happen now? And so that I thought that was like really really good. Almost, you know along the lines, like, you can take your time with it and really sort of discuss um like how that might impact how they choose to play. Like, if they're you can even say, does the Twin Terror player have to play um Vex? Is that, how much will that affect you know their game plan, their end game? Is it really detrimental if they don't hit the 3-star Vex, that sort of thing? Is something you could think about too, talking about. But also, so anyway, yeah. So I really liked that you brought that up. And then, but one thing I too think I'd like to see more of probably is other board states. I know that we saw like a lot of different people just sort of playing these different pentakill boards. A lot of different. One person was trying to reroll Kale, which was really interesting. I think something maybe you might want to talk more about is like specifically sort of like what certain people are doing in the mid game in terms of like what they're playing on the boards. If something like unusual is happening, for example, like Kale has been really not in the meta at all. People keep trying to make it work, but it's out now. So finally, this patch with the rework, Kale seems to finally be having her moment to shine. So maybe bringing that up, mentioning sort of what they're trying to do.
In the context of patch notes.
Yeah, just sort of like, it doesn't have to be all the time, but if something especially like revelatory, like, is like fun, like, oh, it's finally Kale's turn. It's Kale, that's cool. Like, what are they gonna do? It seems to be working. And then even too, like, it looked like multiple players, I think, sort of on a similar note where we noted earlier that 2 players were now going to be playing Vex. it looked like multiple players were trying to play around this pentakill line, and so we saw that one board that you guys were talking about a little bit, like, but we only had the 1-star Kale with all those items slammed, and it's interesting. It's kind of hard, I think, sometimes depending on the observer. Like this, I know this observer is like jumping a lot between different boards, so sometimes it's hard to keep track of like one narrative. That probably changes based on, you know, who's casting and who's
Yeah,
observing.
and I have a question. Like, how deep do you guys think I can go with the analysis? Because like I could be talking about this Vex situation for
I definitely think you can go
because
deep
if
there.
it splits, if one of them hits the Amumu, the other hits the Vex, and both of them can place quite well. But like the thing is that you need to hit at least like 1 to 2 3-stars in order for the comp to really shine. So like
Yeah.
we'll see if even if they can split those 3 costs between themselves, both of them can do well, right? Like how long
Yeah,
should I be
I don't know about
talking about
how
this?
others feel, but I definitely think that you could go deeper in that. The key is, of course, obviously trying to figure out how to say that, you know, short in like if fewer words, I guess. Like how do you say that information in like a very more in a digestible way? But definitely, I think being able to share more of that information will help you also with your whole with sort of what we were talking about earlier, where it's like, do I talk too short or do I talk too long? Like having more information will be able to help you make more points, and then it's easier, I think, probably to cut back and say like the more information in fewer words than it is to be like, oh, I'm not talking enough. How do I fill time? If that makes any sense.
May also depend on your audience and like who you're talking to and about. Because if you find yourself in a situation where you start speaking on a matter in depth, and challenger players think you are incorrect, it will not go well. They are very opinionated, and so finding yourself in a difficult situation, even though you might be right, if X high elo challenger that has 20 million followers on Twitter thinks you're wrong, unfortunately, you're probably wrong. So
But also remember that's not necessarily who you're casting to.
correct.
Like those challenger players are generally playing and not watching main broadcast.
True.
This is
true.
for those,
Correct.
you know,
Yeah, that's
casual
true.
Or
fans.
they're watching like some special POVs like of other
Right.
streamers,
Yeah.
but like most of the time they're not watching like those casts because
I've
it's
seen
just
it
like
in
distracting and like I know many players they also don't like to like listen to casts because sometimes it's just like not much of a knowledge that they do know actually. And going back to your question, like how long you could actually talk about those things, I think it's just like you need to like keep track of the observer, because like if you just like talk too much about that one, like for example that emo situation, and they just like keep switching like onto another board or something, like viewers can get like a little bit confused then if you just like keep talking about this emo situation, right? So I think maybe
Oh, that
you
makes perfect
take
sense.
maybe you take this like a point where you can see like, okay, if they just like switched on another board like 2 seconds ago, you can maybe just like keep talking like 1 or 2 sentences like real quick, and then just like talk about the new POV, because then otherwise people get a little bit confused about the
Yeah.
scene, yeah. But that's
After the
your
swap,
question.
that would probably be the time to stop talking, right? To give some room
Not
to my
directly,
co-caster, right?
because that makes like people maybe like a little bit loose, because like if you just like suddenly stop talking, it's a little bit weird, right? So just like I would just like
Oh,
calm down real quick, like
so
for the last
prompt.
sentence. Yeah. And then keep talking about the next board, but not like not instantly stop talking about it just because they switch
Yeah.
the board, because if that is the case, then you can never end a sentence, because the observers will like always keep switching the boards, right?
The way which I've
Okay.
heard it described before is to try and think of, like with the whole Vex thing, is to try and think of it like you're doing a painting, and that each piece of commentary you give is a brush stroke to there. So you initially lay out like the most broad version of your idea, which is there are multiple players playing Vex in this lobby, which is going to slow down both of them getting to the 3-star. And then you, at that point, you put out the initial premise of your point, and then you pass it to your co-caster. Maybe it moves to a different board, maybe it doesn't. If the co-caster wants to talk about it more, you can then add on an extra brushstroke of putting in some more detail. Like, the one who hits the 3-star first, like, is likely going to finish way above the other, or something. But you don't try and get it all out at once, because it will become overwhelming, and yes, as Twiggy said, you'll likely be on a different board by that point anyway. Also, Zedboy, welcome to the workshop.
Hello.
Hello.
All right.
I thought it was happening, so I thought I'd hop in, see what was up.
Yeah,
see if I can
absolutely.
offer any insight.
All right. Well, I'll throw in the stuff which I wrote down as well. So Quinn, from your end of things, I felt quite bad for you. The observing was like going nuts during the beginning of the stage. I think the best you could, like, this is just going to be a generally worthwhile thing. It's just, if you see that stuff is happening that you wouldn't have expected, or like people are, stuff is changing or going wrong, I'd just try and maybe sort of mentally take a step back and be like, okay, if I can't sort of rely on what I'm looking at, I need to start making my points more general and not just trying to keep up with constantly changing boards. Like maybe switch to a more general topic, and then once you're like, okay, I think pretty sure we've stopped flicking around boards, we can actually start talking about them.
Okay.
I like in general that your instinct is to, when we see a board, to try and provide some sort of extra detail about that board, and try and throw in a little bit more depth. I think that's a really good instinct to have, which will serve you really well. Like, again, it doesn't need to be anything particularly complicated, but just having that there is really good. Yeah, the board evaluation stuff is really good. I'm being harsher. I've got more like critical stuff for left, because I know left has got a little bit more experience.
Yeah, for sure.
So left, certainly to start with, you definitely swung too far the other way and didn't give Quinn anything to play off of.
Yeah.
It was hard for me too, because like, especially with the augment stuff that was happening, and it's like I can't read any of this, and like I kind of know, but like I don't really know how to like lean into that. I'm very like I'm a lot newer to this too, so I definitely need someone who's more experienced to like lean on a little bit. So yeah.
I don't think it was as prevalent, but there was. So back on left again. There was the hesitation and pick up your point thing again, which did happen again in this half. I can't remember specifically what it was, but that's still something I think.
Yeah, I remember like one specific point when it got really bad.
And there was instances, or at least on an instance, of overrunning your co-caster's point when they were kind of when Quinn was sort of working towards the tail end of their point, that you just kind of sort of coming in and going over it. So I would try and steer yourself more, being more hesitant towards interrupting what your co-caster is saying than less at the moment, because it's definitely more on the taking up too much room rather than too little room as it went on. Other smaller stuff is, I probably wouldn't correct your co-caster unless you think it's something that's quite important, like the jazz and the misfortune stuff. Like it's one of those things that it kind of felt quite bad to listen to from an audience's point of view. Like I would generally, if you can, if something's important enough to correct and needs to be corrected right there and then, sure, go ahead. But if it isn't like game changing, I would probably just tend to ignore it. If you don't think it's going to affect the game too much, just because it sounds so awkward to like directly contradict your co-caster. If you want to, you can.
All right.
A way to soften it is to put a little bit of distance between you and the what the person said. So if someone says something and you're like, "Oh, that's wrong," rather than being immediately "that's wrong," is talk about something else and then provide the correct information. And that way, it doesn't sound like you're directly correcting your co-caster. but you're still making sure that if the
Alright,
information is
got it.
important enough for an audience to hear, they do hear it. The only other stuff was, I really liked that you were really excited about the Olaf previously. I would have loved to have seen you lean more into that and kind of, a bit like how Quinn did in the first half, like, just include a little bit more of yourself. Like, you know, saying, oh, I'm really excited to see this, yeah, this guy is going to be an absolute monster and crush everyone, and just, like, let your feelings out into your casting a little bit more.
Okay.
Last thing was I thought it definitely felt like the dynamic between the two of you like developed as it went on. I think if you were to practice more together, like it felt like you both wanted to really have this very snappy back and forth with each other. I think that would long term would work really well. It's just a case of trying to figure out how to get that to happen.
Yeah.
Cool. So I know we've been a little bit overrun on what the original time slot was for this, but before we go do a break and then get the second Honeybear and Fiendfire up for their section, Left and Quinn, I mean, I guess starting with you, Left, like, do you have any kind of final thoughts or stuff you want to take away from today?
Not really.
I suppose I got a lot to work on then.
All I would say is that like you guys provided really good feedback, and like as someone who's just starting the casting journey, and like for my first cast being on Saturday, this is very helpful.
Ooh, exciting.
I agree as to the helpfulness of this. It's really, really valuable feedback. So thanks a lot, guys. This will go a long way.
You're welcome.
Alright, cool.
Thank you for everyone.
Should we take a 7-minute break and come back at 20 past, then we can do the Honeybear and Fiendfire?
Yeah. Sure.
Alright, I'm going to stop the recording for this section.